Personal accountability. So, I think we can all agree that one of the most frustrating things on the planet is somebody with no personal accountability, no self-awareness, will not own up to any of the things that they've done, any of the mistakes that they've made. Even when confronted with, like, maybe substantial evidence. So it's already frustrating enough whenever, like, you're asking kind of in general, who did this, what went wrong, why, whatever, and nobody wants to own up to any of the actions taken, whether it be solely on one person or on multiple different people who can all share in the blame. But obviously, it's even more frustrating whenever you confront one person or people with evidence and they don't own up to it. They don't hold themselves to a certain standard. They don't own up to their actions. It's just frustrating. We have a lot of that goes on at work. So, at work, there are a lot of people that don't like to do their jobs, like to half-ass do their jobs, or maybe they even wholeheartedly go at their jobs with a burning passion and go in there and nail it as far as work ethic every single day. But regardless of those three different cases, they don't own up to any of the slip-ups that they do, whether it be big or small. As I said, that can be very frustrating, and it leads to a lot of pointing fingers, a lot of blame game, and it really holds up progress on anything that can get done. So, I know that personal accountability, it's something that most of us struggle with, including myself. Will admit that 100%. Because it can kind of hurt your ego a little bit to admit that you messed up, or just own up to any of your mistakes, any of your flaws. But it's something that's very necessary. Whenever you sit here and you try to pass the blame off on other people, it ruins your relationships. It kind of makes you more bitter as a person, whether you realize it or not. It does. And it's just overall not healthy. People will lose respect. People will not want to talk to you, not want to confide in you, different stuff like that. And it's just something that people, including myself, really need to work on. Because as I said, at work, it's such a headache every single day having to go in there. Because something as small as a bin got put on a shelf without a label, or the label was like put on wrong, something like that. Just something small, something trivial that could, this is how the ideal situation should go. Hey, who put this label on wrong? Or hey, who didn't put a label on this bin? Oh, me. I'm sorry, I didn't do it. Okay, dope. Put it on there, put it on the right shelf, whatever, good to go. Boom, done. 5 seconds, handled. But instead, people just want to drag it out. And as I said, kind of repeating myself, it just slows up progress. There's pointless headache and pointless stress that can just be totally avoided if you would just say, hey, I fucked up, my bad, and go on about your business. Because that's literally what happened the other day. In amidst of all of this, people pointing fingers at each other and things getting wrong and nobody knows why, nobody knows who done it because nobody wants to own up and nobody wants to, take responsibility, not to, toot my own damn horn, but they came up the other day, some of the higher ups came up and asked who put a bin on the shelf with a piece of tape on it and a Sharpie instead of a label. And that was me. That was 100% me. Knew it by the handwriting, knew it by everything. So obviously, I went, hey, yeah, that was me. Because why lie about it? Why sit there and have, you know, a 10-minute scratch on your head, like, or argument or something over something so stupid? I was like, hey, yeah, I did that. And instead of getting punished, like what? Because, you know, that's one thing. There's a bunch of different reasons, I guess, why people don't have self-accountability. And that could be, as I said, it's an ego thing. It is a fear of punishment. It can be just a multitude of different things. And in that specific scenario, a lot of people would probably pass it off on, you know, fear of punishment. You know what happened instead of punishment? I got thanked that I owned up to something so simple as the bin didn't have, like, the right format of, like, organization and labeling on it. And it sounds so, like, silly to say out loud and so simple and trivial, but there are genuinely people out there, people at work or people out there just in general in the world, that would sit there and if you had picture evidence of them doing it, just wouldn't own up to it. And it's like, why? What is the point in sitting there doing that? And one of the funniest things to me, I know this is kind of more of a rant than it is like actual, I guess, you know, podcast, whatever. But one of the things that cracks me up the most is, I know from firsthand experience, that there are also people out there who, before even like checking any further into a situation, it goes back into the kind of pointing fingers game and playing blame game, but without any further investigation into a particular problem, will immediately just go and assume that a certain individual or a certain group of individuals did something and screwed something up, and so they'll go call them out, or maybe not in an aggressive way or a mean way, because all of this doesn't have to be in an aggressive way. Any of the name or like the word calling, finger pointing, anything like that, it doesn't have to be like in an aggressive, necessarily like mean way. But they'll go and they'll call a group out, and then that group will pretty quickly, the group or individual, prove that it was not them, and prove that either it was a pre-existing problem, or in fact the person pointing the fingers in the first place was the one that did it, and they just either didn't realize it or forgot. And in that situation specifically, you just make yourself look like an ass. So it's kind of like a twofold problem. It's like, you want to have your self-accountability and you want to own up to your mistakes, as well as you also don't want to be the person pointing out all of the flaws or the mistakes or assuming anything like that. And obviously there's a time and a place for it, because, you know, there is such a thing as like constructive criticism, and kind of it's good to point out to somebody kind of where they went wrong, in the sense of like build them up, showing them what they did wrong, why, and how to avoid that in the future. But you don't want to go at it from like a place of kind of like malice or anything like that. But all that being said, back to the example, I experienced that firsthand as well. There has been a time where I was pulled to the shelf over a part that, so it was a TV, and we have a dedicated area for things like TVs and like microwave stuff like that, the electronics area. To give a little bit more context, I work in a warehouse, a parts warehouse. So we have like an electronics area, and this particular TV, I believe it was a TV. It could have been like a fridge door, but we're gonna say TV for the sake of the argument, because I mean it's exact same situation and scenario regardless of the part. The part is trivial either way. It was put on a specific aisle that was kind of reserved for other parts that were coming from a different facility that weren't at our facility. Even that's kind of a trivial point. I go off on weird rabbit holes on my stories and tell unnecessary details, but either way, the whole point of the story is the person came up to me, took me to the shelf and said, "Hey, you put that there. Why did you put it there?" I said, "No, I didn't. What makes you think I did?" Couldn't really give me an answer. Then I looked at the label, then went to the computer to also further back up the label. The time that it was put on the shelf, and okay, so it wasn't even really put on there wrong, because it came from a different facility and it was put on the shelf for things from a different facility, but the person in question wanted it on the electronics aisle, despite the fact that it was supposed to be on that shelf. Either way, I digress. Where's I even going with that? Okay, either way, where I was going with that, brain fart. Okay, I know this is all over the place. I'm sorry, but this is what happens whenever I get in on tangents. I digress. The part was put on the shelf like 6 months or a year before I ever even got there. But said person was so confident that I put it on the shelf and I put it on there wrong. It's like, why? Why? What made you not dig into the matter even further? Not use a little bit of like a logic, common sense? And why just come point fingers? Why just come like start not necessarily an argument, but like we wasted 5 or 10 minutes of time that I could be doing something else and like getting something constructive done. I say all that to say, like I said, it just kind of makes you look like an ass. It's like, why do it? Why would you put yourself in that position? And then kind of the same scenario with like outside of like holding yourself to a standard and taking responsibility for your actions, kind of touching back on like taking responsibility for the things that you're supposed to do, like your job titles, not wanting to do your job, different stuff like that. It amazes me the levels that people will go to avoid, like the amount of work that people will put into avoid doing work, and a bunch of delegation of stuff that just doesn't need to be delegated. And what it really boils down to is you're not overwhelmed, you just don't want to do your job, because we've had situations where people point blank told us that they wanted us to do this so they didn't have to do it later. And it's like no. Everybody within an organization, within a company, whatever you want to call it, if you have a job, you have a set amount of things you're supposed to do. Jobs can vary. Your job description can change. Things can be added. Things can be taken away. But you have a pretty general basis of what you're supposed to be doing. So go do it. You signed up for the job knowingly. You put yourself in that position. So do what you signed up to do. If you didn't want to do it, why did you sign up? If you don't want to do it, quit. But quit trying to make other people's lives harder just to make yours easier. because in life in general, but also especially within work, everybody has their own stuff going on. Everybody has their own job to do. Everybody has their own role to play, their own piece of the puzzle to put together. And as I said, things can be added on to that or taken away. Things will go a whole lot smoother if you will just bite the bullet, do what you're supposed to do, and get done and get out of there. But as I said, it just kind of amazes me the extent that people will go to not do that. Yeah, it's the moral of the story is don't be an ass. Take responsibility for everything that you've done, any of the mistakes that you've made. Work on yourself and fix your flaws and get yourself squared away, especially before you go trying to point fingers at anybody else, because it will not go the way that you want it to. Just be a good human and don't be an ass. That's just the moral of this entire rant, I guess. I hope that made sense. I know that it was a lot more like a rant and a tangent than it was anything else, and I honestly probably didn't get any of the points in that I originally wanted to in the first place, but I mean, I guess that's how it goes sometimes, and I guess that's makes the best, I don't even know what word to use. I have another brain fart. Either way, it makes for like the best conversations. We'll go with that. But yeah, all that being said, repeat myself once again because I feel like that it really, really needs to be reiterated for all the people in the back. Hold yourself accountable, fix yourself, and own up to your own mistakes and move forward. Learn from the mistakes that you have made and don't do them again. Apply that knowledge and apply that experience to exact situations in the future and similar situations, because what you may learn from one thing, it may not directly correlate with something else, but you can sometimes still pretty well apply it. I mean, just using logic and common sense. A lot of things go hand in hand. So, yeah. Hold yourself accountable. That is kind of it for the rant. Hope you guys got something out of it. I hope you also know that I was preaching as much at myself as I was at any of you. But yeah, it's about all I got. See ya.